The time for talking is over. Well, almost. Let's get the pregame keys done first, and then Ohio State, Tennessee in the first round of the college football playoff can begin. We have talked about every single conceivable angle about this game, but surely there's a few more. Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham, I am Austin Ward. It is cold. It is a little bit windier than anticipated.
Yeah.
And I walked past a section of the parking lot that had 7 consecutive orange tailgate tents. None of that should be a surprise to anyone.
No, I wasn't sure what to expect from the Tennessee fan. If you pay attention to Twitter, you might think there's going to be 90,000 Tennessee fans here. I didn't think it was going to be quite that bad, but I remain interested to see exactly what it looks like in here. It feels like it's a late arriving crowd in general, which it's pretty cold. It makes sense. Your homes are nice and toasty. I don't really know what else more to say about the game. Like I'm going to be keyed in on what's happening on the line of scrimmage and what this quote-unquote rotation might look like at the guard position. Is it actually a rotation? Is it a contingency plan in case something goes wrong? I don't have a great feel for that, although Zach Warren did help shed some light on it, I think, a little bit on the playoff kickoff the other day. But that's kind of where it starts and ends for me. If Ohio State's okay there, then I think Ohio State probably wins the game. And if it's not, then it'll get interesting.
Yeah, for me, it's a lot of reiterating of what we've already talked about.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's what the keys are about. We do this before the game in case there's new stuff, injuries. But Ohio State seems pretty clear
there. There are none to report.
Other than the two that you're missing all year, Josh Simmons and Seth McLaughlin.
They did complete the Gabe Powers trade. That transaction was announced.
That's good. So Gabe Powers to Kansas State for a player to be named later.
For Will Howard.
It was Will Howard for a player to be named later, and they sent back Gabe Howard at the end of the year.
I get it now.
Yeah.
I'm not really anticipating a crowd to get here till later. It doesn't make sense. I think I'm going to chalk it up to Ohio State fans being smarter than Tennessee fans and just taking their time to get here because, A, stay sober until you're getting closer to game time so you're actually into the game, and B, it's freaking cold out. But for me, the key really is move on from the Michigan loss. Move the pocket.
Oh,
move Will Howard around.
This is good. I like this.
And move bodies up front.
Ooh.
Right?
Okay.
That's it.
You should go
and
there.
then, guess what happens if you do all that?
You win. You move on.
Yeah.
You move to the Rose Bowl. So it's really a simple recipe, but it's obviously not going to be a simple task. It's watching the first 2 games of the playoff. I'm reminded of how unfortunate it is for Ohio State that this is not seeded 1 through 12 because the Buckeyes certainly, Ohio State and Tennessee both have
they should both feel hard done by.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate when you watch the other games because you knew how those ones were going to go, and this one feels like a legitimate toss-up, unlike any of the other first-round games.
Yeah, maybe we've learned something in those first 2 games that the college football playoff and the selection committee can take into consideration in the future, but that won't change anything for right now. It won't change Ohio State's path forward. It won't change the fact that Tennessee's having to go on the road and play in the horseshoe in this game in the cold. And I think maybe we've made too much of the weather. It's going to be the same for both teams. And Knoxville does get a little bit chillier at times, at least compared to maybe the rest of the conference. But I do think that the ball security factor is something to pay attention to because Tennessee is the last thing in all of the research, getting to it at the end of the week with Dylan Sampson in the last 6 games, 4 fumbles. Nico throughout the duration of the year, careless with the football, doesn't throw interceptions, but 9 fumbles for him. So whether that's just punching, whether that's dealing with the elements, I don't know. I think that also goes for Ohio State in the loss at Oregon. The turning point early on was a fumble from Quinshon Judkins. So, that goes both ways. Ohio State has to protect the football. Will Howard has to be smart with the football. Interceptions have been costly in those 2 losses, and then a fumble that we all know what happened in that game after that, and the way that allowed Oregon to get its footing going after Quinshon's fumble. So that goes both ways. And that may be obvious to say you protect the football, turnovers matter, but it is a key to this game, particularly because it's going to be wonky at times.
No, I think that is where the weather comes into play. We're recording this as Texas and Clemson are playing, so I don't know how that game started. But
it's 0-0, but it's 75 degrees and sunny.
The other 2 games, though, started with early turnovers, right? It's like Kevin Jennings couldn't stop throwing the ball to Penn State in that game. And I think part of that might be just sort of the feel or lack of feel you have when it is this cold, so that'll be something to deal with. Will Howard played a game last year at Kansas State where there was 4 feet of snow on the ground, so I don't think it's much of an issue for him, but maybe there's an opportunity there to get to Nico Iamaleava. He's from California, right? He's skinny. maybe his bones are rattling a little bit. I mean, you could, in all honesty, like I think Ohio State could try to put this thing away rather early. If I'm not saying Tennessee's going to struggle to handle the elements because, like you said, it's cold in Knoxville too. But the quarterback, especially, if this is any kind of raucous home environment for Ohio State, and it's loud, and he can't hear, and his hands are cold, and he drops the football, and Ohio State cashes in on that, like that is momentum that I don't know that maybe Tennessee would be able to overcome if Ohio State could swing it. So Ohio State has been a little bit of a slower starting team this year. Even in the games where it's played really well, it has started slow. It'd be a heck of a thing if it could start with some fire tonight. I
mean, if you're leading, if Ohio State is the strength of their team now that they're going to win on defense, you're allowed to score on defense too. Sure. And we saw Penn State, its offense was struggling to get rolling early on in that game. And where did they spark the crowd to life? Where did they put their stamp on it? It was by taking back 2 interceptions for touchdowns. So it doesn't fumble, interception, whatever. I mean, the silver bullets, what we talked about, Berm, from the previous couple years. Can you be aggressive? Can you dictate terms? Or are you going to play conservatively and bend but don't break? I think that Jim Knowles, I don't know, he seemed pretty confident on Tuesday, the way he was carrying himself. I think they know that they've got to be on the front foot and that they don't have to score, but it would be pretty beneficial if they did.
They just have to affect Nico. They have to get to him early in this game. Yeah. You cannot let him get comfortable. You cannot let him get any confidence going. He is a exceptionally streaky quarterback. When he's going poorly, he's going very poorly. You need to get him rattled, and some of that's going to be the crowd. The crowd has to show up and be loud early. Some of that's just going to be Ohio State getting to him with the front four. Tennessee's offensive line is not the strength of their team, despite the fact that Dylan Sampson led the SEC in rushing. But in a game like this, in a weather like this, it's not going to be slippery or anything like that. But it is harder to get your body moving. So, like, each time you hit a guy, it hurts a little bit worse when it's 20 degrees outside. And you just have to be able to get to Nico and hit him early. And if you do that, I think Ohio State can win this game. If there's no pressure from the front four for Ohio State early, that is a real bad sign, I think, for the way this game could go.
Are we all in agreement that Ohio State wants its defense on the field first in this game?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
This team right now, as it's constructed, is defense first. Like, that's what's going to take them to a championship, in my opinion. That's, I think, what would give the crowd an opportunity to get behind them if they can go out there and stop Dylan Sampson right away, get a 3 and out. I think that might bring some juice. I think that would be ideal for Ryan Day. Name one player that you don't think you've talked about in the last 3 weeks that's going to be key today.
Jordan Hancock. Yeah, I don't. Tennessee, like, will do some 12 personnel stuff, and I'm sure Jim Knowles will respond in kind when that happens. But with these wide splits being what they are, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Ohio State's defensive backs and the corners in particular to have to perform one-on-one, kind of isolated from the rest of the defense. And then maybe, too, with Jordan Hancock, the nature of his position is going to have to help against the run as well. Like, I think if he's locked in and he plays a really good game, then Ohio State's defense is going to be pretty tough to crack for Tennessee.
Okay, that's a good one.
Quinshon Judkins, who has not really been what everyone anticipated him to be when he transferred into Ohio State. He's had a couple hits early in the season where you're like, wow, that's what you thought you were getting. And it's been about 2 months since we've seen one of those. And this, I think, could be a game that comes down to a little bit of him head-to-head against Dylan Sampson and who dictates terms, as you said, like who's able to fall forward. And that's not all on Quinshon. Obviously, he needs to be able to get to the line of scrimmage before he gets hit. And that's a key for Ohio State, obviously. But if Ohio State wants to win this game, I'm not saying they have to outrush Tennessee, but they have to have an effective running game.
Don't challenge Ryan Day to do that.
It needs to be. You need to be able to pick up 2 yards when you need 2 yards, and they were not able to do that in the last couple of games on the ground. So hopefully, with the revamped offensive line, we're saying that for the 4th time this year, you get
at least
you get some push up front. So Quinshon, I think, needs to have a big day.
On the 3rd play of the game at Oregon, it was like, Ohio State's found something here. They're going to start activating Will Kazmarek. That catch went for 33 yards, and it also gave him a 6-week injury at the same time.
Seems like it wasn't worth it.
It was not a good trade, and I think that has had an effect on the run blocking, and I think it has an effect on what maybe Ohio State could do in the middle of the field with its passing attack. He got back in time to play against Michigan, but it was not all that effective. Yeah. Not at the way that I would have imagined, not at the way that it seemed like it was trending in the middle of the year. Maybe now if you add 3 more weeks of rest, recovery, reactivation, I don't know if that sparks both rushing, both passing. I don't know. We'll see. But he's certainly somebody that I think needs to make an impact in this game.
I think we talked about it early in the week, right? The tight ends were live for Georgia when Carson Beck threw for like 340, whatever that was, in that game. The middle of the field, I think, is very much available. And obviously that's an Emeka Egbuka conversation, but why not Will Kazmarek? We haven't seen it from him yet.
I mean,
do it tonight.
Any of them. I mean, they can throw it to Will Kazmarek. They can throw it to G. Scott. We've seen some increased usage of Jelani Thurman. I mean, like, one way or another, the tight ends for Ohio State are going to have to be a part of this game plan. They're going to have to show up. And that's it. There's no more talk. We're talked out. It is time for the college football
We'll talk to you after the game.
We will talk to you after the game, but we'll have something new to talk about, which is what I'm ready for. I hope you are too. Thanks for following along with all the coverage in the build-up to this game at the Horseshoe. It is finally here. We're excited. These have been the Pregame Keys on the podcast. He's Bill Landis. That is Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Enjoy the game, folks. We'll talk to you afterwards.